One of the most polarising disputes in sport came to an end this week when sacked rugby union star Israel Folau reached a secret settlement deal with Rugby Australia in his unfair dismissal case.
Joining us live now to talk all things rugby union, and particularly this week, Courier Mail and News Corp rugby man, cricket man, there's not many sports he hasn't done, Jim Tucker from our studios in Brisbane. Jimmy, great to have you on the program. Now that we can look back, what are your thoughts on both sides, the way it was handled?
Well, it's such a complicated animal. My position hasn't changed on Israel Folau. I think it's initially one of the most selfish acts I've ever seen in sport. Many of the consequences were foreseeable, and in a completely team-orientated sport, Israel Folau decided to brush any sense of team and pursue a very selfish line. I've held that position right from the start. This week, what are we to say of this? It's not rugby or Israel Folau coming to an answer on what is right or wrong. It is purely a situation where rugby couldn't go broke. They made a smart, I would have to say, financial decision, looking at how much they would have to cough up essentially in legal fees over a drawn-out court case, and worked out that their charter is not to send rugby union broke, it is to manage the game. They got out, they're wiping their brow saying Israel Folau is now someone else's problem.
What do you think is next for Folau? Do you think he will ever play rugby in Australia or overseas?
That's a really good question. Even overnight, now that the settlement has been made, we've heard from the Bulls rugby union team in South Africa. They also play in Super Rugby. There was an approach made to their chief executive, whether it was directly from the Folau camp or a lawyer who was just sounding out around the edges. He really summed up what many football clubs would be thinking. Initial excitement, but they're weighing it up and going, the controversial status of Folau, it's not worth taking the risk, essentially. Now that is the rugby union stance from the Bulls in South Africa. Again, you get to the NRL, they've had a lot of salvation cases, you could say, over their last 20 years. And on a commercial sense, there's a cheap bargain basement superstar potentially out there for an NRL club who can pull it off. Now, the Brisbane Broncos, they had a winger who scored 37 tries in just 39 games, Israel Folau, a decade ago. So some thought amongst Broncos fans that wouldn't be great to have a winger like Israel Folau back on the wing. But the bosses at the NRL have no wish to register him because his talk is non-inclusive, and they are an inclusive sport, the NRL at the top level say. So still so much to play out.
Yeah, but it could get very difficult for NRL or any other sport that probably the administrators don't want Israel Folau. But if he gets a club that backs him and wants him and comes with the legal power, there's no reason why we won't see another big fight going on.
Yeah, well, that's the case, Tim. I mean, there were many people in this argument. I said at the start how complicated it was. There were lots of people who disagreed with what Folau said, but also backed his ability to say what he wanted to say on the basis of he's a free man who can say what he wishes, even if they saw hate and non-inclusion in his words. So that all is to play out. And the thing I think many people found hard to grasp was when a page was set up, a GoFundMe page, that $1 million essentially was whistled up in next to no time. Sick children, hospitalised kids, the battle to raise funds for things of that nature is a real battle every single day. Yet Folau found support for virtually $1 million at the click of a finger. And you can't ignore the fact there are people supporting Israel Folau's view on life. I feel that if you're an employee of a company, you have to be very respectful of what their values are. You have to accept there's going to be consequences. If I wore a T-shirt in this morning that was scrawled with 4-letter words, someone will pull me off air and say, look, you've got one chance, and if I did it tomorrow, you would never see me again. That's the situation, and Folau flagrantly went against decency, really, in terms of Rugby Australia, and put them through the mud for the last 12 months.
Jim, always good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on. Thankfully, these stories don't come up very often, but it hasn't gone away. We're going to see it pop up somewhere down the track. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
And you. Thanks very much.